Talking about active mobility. On the one hand, active mobility is a great success during the last 10 years because the new paradigm was introduced. We are no more talking about non-motorized transport. We are talking really about active mobility. We are showing this is a people's need, this is a people's right. We are absolutely clear in the message. We are designed to move, and also there are strong social components in active mobility. So this is the good news. But there is a handicap in active mobility, in particular in cycling. Many politicians and also the normal citizens are thinking cycling is for free and it's a leisure activity. So you are doing this when you have additional time, but you do not cycling in a normal status. So we have two different societies in Europe. The ones they have already discovered cycling. They do it as a super normal daily habit. They are enjoying all the advantages of active mobility. And we have the others. They had not really discovered this. And this is on the one hand absolutely highly correlated with is this city or region a car-oriented city, but it also depends on the whole development about the last half century. So for example, in Eastern Europe we have many cities, they are just starting to discover active mobility. But whenever they do so, they have great examples they can follow up. And whenever they do so, people realize. But what's most important is also we have several stages of development, and for the Velocity conferences we classified those cities. We have the starter cities up to 10% in mode share, we have then the climber cities up to 20%, we have the advanced cities up to 30%, and the higher ones are the so-called champions. And we have examples of all of that. Well, telling you some good examples in this field. And let me, as we are here in Rio de Janeiro with just the current successful Velocity conference, let me start with the host cities of Velocity. Those cities are intended to invest in cycling. Those cities are normally going to a master plan. And this master plan is essential because it's not only a commitment, it's a clear plan how to go forward, and in particular to invest. Because you have to invest. You have to invest in any mode of transport. No mode is for free, but the active modes, of course, are much cheaper than the motorized ones. And we have examples all over Europe from such host cities. For example, in 2011 we have been in Seville. On before people thought, oh, you cannot cycle there, it's much too hot. But this is not an argument. We were also in Copenhagen where it rains many days of the year, and also this is another reason not to cycle. What we need first of all is we need infrastructure, and we have to inform the people, so we have to deliver them easy access to the active modes. And in Sevilla, for example, within a few years, with some investments in a good working cycle net, they improved from 1% up to 7%. And another example was Munich in 2007, where they started at about 6%, and within 1 decade they brought it up to 20 plus. This is an incredible success in going forward. Well, talking about active mobility, we have to take into account the integrated transport, and let's look for all the other modes of transport. What we like most to explain is the so-called eco-mobility hierarchy. That means start with the best one from the active modes, with the best cost relationship, and go through all the means of transport and end with this one which is most inefficient. And in this hierarchy, the best one is walking. And the second one is cycling. And then it follows public transport. And then we are coming to the different sharing modes. And finally, the last one is the motorized individual transport. Do we have an example for that? We have many examples, but let me highlight in this context Vienna. When we had the Velocity Conference 2013 in Vienna, Vienna already had a high mode share in public transport. This was really, really excellent, but they were not so good in cycling. Meanwhile, they invested also into this mode, and people like it, people enjoy it. What we have to say, particular on cycling here, is that public cycling, that means the public bike sharing schemes, that they are really part of the active modes and at the same time of the public transport. So this is important to use this to bring both the active mobility and the public transport up to a higher level, and this works quite well, as we can see in Vienna. Public cycling is a worldwide success story. It's increasing fast, and every day we get good news from all over the world on this. For example, on the occasion of the first World Bicycle Day in 2018, right now, June the 3rd, in New Delhi, was the Vice President of India, a new smart cycling public system was introduced and officially opened. This is a great success. On the other hand, we have messages all over the world that newly introduced floating systems are also producing absolutely catastrophic scenarios with damaged bicycles. This is a bad news we should also talk about. So what makes the difference if it works or not? Well, it's very easy. It's all about responsibility. If the suppliers and public authorities together take responsibility for public transport and public space in one, then it works. Otherwise, it will fail. And we have seen when, for example, the city of Lyon introduced their new public bike scheme several years ago, it was the city themselves who started to be really the operator for this new service. And this is another good example also to show that cities more and more discover, hey, public space is really an issue of the responsibility of the public authorities, and public space must give access to all people, the young and the old. It's not the space for cars only, it's the space firstly and primarily for the active modes, walking and cycling. It can be used for public means, public transport, and also in an equivalent balance for individual motorized transport. Well, firstly, cities are in a competition with each other. If high qualified people have the opportunity to take their engagement, their new job in the one or in the other city, it's for them and for their families absolutely an important argument looking for the quality of life of the city where they would like to go to. And what makes the quality of life in the city? Many of the quality aspects we can discover in public space. Public space is what people like to meet in. They are going to, they are walking, they are cycling, they are shopping in a city center if it's easy accessible by active modes. This development started already end of the 70s, early 80s, when Jan Gehl, the very famous architect from Copenhagen, started to create cities for people. But according to this, we also learned, meanwhile, that cities are inherently designed to be not perfectly built up, fixed, ready-made. No, cities must be in the permanent development, in change. So if we have a flexible use in public space, also this is an aspect of livability in our cities. And we have good examples for that. We have Copenhagen, we have Amsterdam, we have cities like Münster in Germany, we have other smaller cities. Even my own hometown, Memmingen, is a good example for that. And the more a city is livable, the better it is even for the retailers, for the shop owners in the city center. And whenever in such a city there are starting discussions to put the cars out and to bring people with active modes in, it's a fear, it's a great fear of the shop owners. Hey, we will lose our customers, they will go outside to the big markets. And then they discover, hey, at the end we have more people in with the active modes. And we are even increasing and improving our business. So active life in cities is good for all. It's good for the city itself, it's good for all people there, and it's good for business. How to make shopping with the bike if you are intended to sell more or to buy more. It's both. We have small businesses, they have to reach their shop downtown at every time, and we have, of course, the higher number of customers. They are also intended sometimes to buy more. If you take your bicycle, okay, one can carry 5 kilograms, the other 10. You have high volume issues. What do you do then? Well, we can see different stages of development. More and more shops are discovering that their customers are by bike. And on the recent Velocity we had the example here in Rio that shop owners thought that 60% are coming by the car. And in real, as measured, it were only 25%. And most of the people were really coming as pedestrians, or a few of them as cyclists. So that means those customers have already their solutions how they will manage the transport, or as we are saying, how they will manage the first and the last mile when they are going shopping. And what we see in advanced cities is that there the shop owners then actively are offering transport services, and in the really advanced active mobility cities they are offering cargo bikes. They are offering the ability that people can let their own bicycle there, take the bicycle, the cargo bicycle home, and bring it back. Now you may say, it takes much more time than with the car. And exactly this is not the truth in fact, because people like it absolutely not when they have to wait in their car, when they are stuck in traffic jam, when they have to look for a place in a big parking garage, and maybe this is not free, and when they have a long distance between the parking garage and the shop itself. So the direct, really direct connectivity between A and B, between the shop and your home, is even more convenient with a cargo bike. And we see this in numbers of sales during the last few years, that this ability for the first and the last mile by cargo bikes has an incredible increase, and we see a great future for transport here by cargo bikes. how to convince politicians about more investments in cycling. Well, the keyboard is almost endless because the advantages of cycling, the benefits, are incredibly high. What I like to start with quite often is to talk about money, to talk about really the monetary advantages, because they always have a limited budget, and their thinking comes from, hey, I have anyhow a tight budget, and now I shall invest more from a budget I do not have. But it's exactly the other way around. And the simple question to ask is, if you think that €1 investment will bring you forward, then please invest. If you are convinced that it will be not a good investment, then forget it. And by that we can start to calculate and to point out how more effective cycling is compared with motorized transport. Here the calculations are very, very clear. And it's better to say cycling is not for free. You have to build space for cycling. And now, good luck, we are entering the era of e-mobility. And e-mobility is incredible because all politicians like to be modern, to be up to date with new means of transportation, and in particular with e-mobility. And the introduction of e-cars is going very, very slowly and far ahead. The fastest improvement we can see with e-bikes, with pedelecs, and also some speed pedelecs. But most important are the pedelecs, because they are bicycles, and this is leveraging the number of bicycles. And also with the cargo bikes I was already talking about, it's a high advantage to have the support of the e-meshing, the e-engine. So overall, this is a tool of modern development politicians like. But there's also another one, an emotional one, because cyclists in many cities are a clear majority, and cycling is increasing almost everywhere. So if you are a politician who would like to win the next election, you have to look for majorities. And cyclists are most often a clear majority. Cycling is a lifestyle. Cycling is an active-oriented mode to live. Cycling is green, it's nature-oriented, it's open-air-oriented. It's absolutely a livable attitude. And politicians who know about that are using their bicycle themselves in an election campaign. And when they see that others are doing this, and when I see that others are doing this in cities, then they will follow. In this sense, we already have a nice revolution. And then I also often, as an ECF president, was talking about sustainability. This is a very tricky issue because politicians very often use the word sustainability. It's absolutely up to date. And I like to ask them, what do you understand under sustainability? What will you do to make your city sustainable? What will you do to encourage your people, to motivate them, really to teach them to be also sustainable? And then, wow, what a surprise, they do not know how. And by cycling we can easily explain how it works, how easy it works. It's winning, it's not losing anything. And according to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, we know that first of all countries in the world are developing countries, because all of them do not fulfill all the criteria of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And on the other hand, we know, meanwhile, that cycling delivers to 14 of these 17 goals. And this is incredible. So if politicians would like to invest really in sustainable development, they should invest in cycling. First of all, we must know that cycling itself is absolutely a very safe mode. It's more about the others, in particular it's the car, it's the motorized transport, that can hurt walking and cycling significantly. First of all, we know that the increase of a speed limit from 30 up to 50 increases the risk for active mobility for pedestrians and cyclists 8 times. This is incredible. Secondly, we know how important gender is according to road safety. In a worldwide study, it was discovered that we need between 15 and 20% in mode share on cycling to come to a gender balance. Below that, we have a male dominance. When we reach the balance, very, very fast the number of female cyclists increases. This is interesting because it's a very important indicator for road safety. That means as long as we have not enough cyclists on the road, it's the place for the fighters, for the warriors, for the strong male behaviors. And when we reach this, what we call safety in numbers of between 15 and 20%, then cycling becomes safe. And the statistics we have all over Europe are exactly explaining this. So, what must we do to increase cycling up to this level is the first question we have to call and to ask the decision makers. The second issue is then, according to that, what will they do to invest actively in safe cycling if they really want to do so? And here we have to think about what we can learn from the Chief of Road Safety Research at the World Bank. This is SUMP, a professor from Australia, and he clearly states, well, you cannot make an unsafe system safe. Please build up a new safe system from bottom up. What does this mean in our cities? Well, it simply means give no priority to cars. Give priority to the active modes. Give priority to pedestrian and cyclists. And in particular, give priority wherever you can for the 30-kilometer speed limit, which is a recommendation of the European Parliament, and use the higher speed limits for the ring roads, for the main roads. There the speed can be even higher. And there we need also then the segregation of the different modes on transport. Having a wish to the European Commission, but also to national governments, I would like to start by ending the disbalance in the investments with public money. We started just 1 year ago the EU cycling strategy to mark clearly where further activities and investments are needed, because it's an incredible disbalance. And this disbalance, firstly, we can explain by high investments for technical solutions. Any new investments in e-mobility with cars are highly subsidized, while we get no money to do the same with the fast increasing number of e-bikes. And politicians are saying, hey, the one is growing by itself. and the other not. So we have really to support that the world's not growing. No, it's the other way around. They should invest in that where they have the faster return on invest. And these are in this case really the sustainable modes by cycling. Secondly, looking to the big tenders for research, looking to Horizon 2020. Well, here also we have defined categories for investments in technical research and improvement. We do not have that much in the social development, and we do not have what we need for the active modes. Therefore, I introduced today at the Velocity Conference here in Rio, and I will do the same at the World ITS Conference in Copenhagen, the so-called fusion mobility. The fusion mobility concept is active mobility based, and it's a systemic approach showing what's important, and it describes that it's necessary to come to sustainable investments, that we have to overcome the fragmentation of the different departments. We have to bring all together what's according to sustainable transport. We have to develop the holistic view. And fusion mobility in particular is important when we now are facing the new digital development. Let's talk briefly about the so-called artificial intelligence, or let's call it machine learning. If this will happen in the just car-centered development, it will optimize just the car transport, and it will be even a roll back in former car-centered situations. If we are taking into account active mobility also, public space needs also, the eco-mobility hierarchy also, the abilities of shared mobility and of integrated mobility, all the new great fast increasing spectrum of new vehicles and infrastructure, then the stupid machines will create completely different parameters. So that means, talking about artificial intelligence, politicians and decision makers must know it's important how we will feed these machines to have results where we really respect human needs and create social inclusion, and not invest and work just for technical development. This is a great challenge, but also a great opportunity for our future.